Good afternoon, everybody. You are all very welcome to our webinar this afternoon on connecting men, hope, strength, and bravery. So my name is Cillian, and I am the Development Officer working with Mental Health Ireland, and I cover the Midwest region, Clare, Limerick, and North Tipperary. So this webinar is, I suppose, celebrating International Men's Day, which is happening on Wednesday, November 19th. And yeah, it's just, I suppose, why this conversation matters is because it's just spreading that awareness around mental health and well-being for men, and just to, I suppose, have an open conversation with the panelists that are joining me here this afternoon. And it's going to be a really enjoyable discussion, I'm sure. And for those of you that are attending, it'll be great for you, I suppose, to get involved, ask questions, and just learn from the panelists that are here this afternoon. So the main outline of the webinar is we're going to hear real stories from men about what courage, connection, and resilience means to them. And a little bit of the housekeeping as well around today's webinar will be here for around an hour. And this will also be recorded for the Mental Health Ireland YouTube channel and the Mental Health Ireland website as well. Other than that, the Q&A button, like I mentioned at the start, is at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any questions you want to ask the panelist during the webinar, please feel free to even preload some questions in the middle of the webinar, or even towards the end as well. And hopefully we will be able to answer them as well. This again is a really important conversation, so I'm just delighted to be able to facilitate and to host this and to be able to have a good conversation around men's mental health for International Men's Day. So I think that's a little bit about the background and how long we'll be here for today. So I'll just invite my panelists Keith, Darren, and Karl to turn on their cameras and unmute, and we'll get started with the panel discussion. So Karl, I'll pass it over to yourself if you want to say a quick hello and introduce yourself. Thanks a million.
Yeah, thanks, Cillian. Yeah, I'm Karl Spain. I'm a development officer working for Mental Health Ireland, and I look after the Dublin North region along with Kildare and West Wicklow. And I'm also the founder member of a men's group out in North Dublin, out in Malahide. And we set it up in March, and we're a men's walk and talk group, which tackles, I suppose, isolation, loneliness, and it builds connection. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Karl. Good to have you here. And Keith, I'll go to yourself next.
Yeah, thanks, Cillian. I'm Keith. I'm a father of two boys, and they're 16 and 11. And I'm a gym owner. Had gym last 20 years in the health and fitness business. And also, I know what it's like, why these things are important, because I went through a bad time, come back out and now on the other side in the past 18 months. And I think that's why I'm here, not just as an expert or coach above anybody else. It's to be part of a group to help men connect. I think it's very important.
Brilliant. Thanks, Billy and Keith. Great to have you here. Looking forward to the discussion. Darren, I'll pass it over to yourself.
Hi, Cillian. Thanks for having me on. My name's Darren Scanlon. I am the founder of the Celbridge Boys Club. Set the Boys Club up in 2023, and ultimately it's a place for men to come together and have a safe place where they can, connect, get outdoors, look after their physical, mental health. We set up in response to the alarming numbers in suicide among men and the rate of addiction in our local town. So just wanted to try and do something to help try and give men that outlet.
Super. Thanks a million, Darren. Great. It's great to have you here as well. So again, looking forward to the discussion this afternoon. So I'll throw out the first question, and Karl, I might come to yourself first. So why does this conversation matter around for International Men's Day? So I'll pass it to yourself. Thanks a million.
Yeah, thanks, Cillian. I suppose, when I thought about this topic in this webinar, I often think that how men suffer in silence. And there is, it's really good to talk, and it's good to express your emotions and show your vulnerability. That we have a lot of silent struggles, we all have challenges, and we may be hiding some stuff in the shadows that we haven't really addressed. And that would be, I know that's a bit deep, and I suppose, I'm in my 50s now, but my own background will be a fractured family unit. So from a young age, my parents would have been separated, and we had a few moving houses, moving schools type activity. And that does kind of, wear on you a little bit. You bring it with you as a shadow, and then when you go and address it and you can talk about it to good people around you, good friends, good circle, it does help you become, the next version of yourself. So yeah, I suppose to summarize that will be to normalize vulnerability, just be able to talk to like-minded people who can help and support you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Karl. That's lovely. Yeah, just to normalize the conversation and yeah, the vulnerability as well. Really, really important. Keith, I'll pass it to yourself. If that's okay. Thanks a lot. Why does this conversation matter?
Yeah, and Karl actually mentioned the key word there, the silence. And silence, I think silence can be so heavy that as men, you're taught like man up and you carry so much alone. And it's almost like you feel you have to control everything and have a grip on everything. And when you don't, then it's like a sign of weakness, or speaking out is seen as a sign of weakness. Whereas I found in my gym background and with some of the groups I've run online or in person, one simple, honest conversation can save a life. I've had people reach out to me just because they've seen either videos I've put out myself. I'm a single dad, went through a relationship breakup, been homeless, living on the streets, living in a hostel, and it's all turned around now. And I've been brutally honest on social media with all of that. And that's what people have reached out to me a lot about, is seeing that honesty and how they've related to certain topics or things I've said. And it's given them the strength to either speak up or get help or just reach out in general. And I think just conversations create connections, and then they go hand in hand with each other. It's conversation, it's connection that matters. I think really it's true that if people see one man open up and speaking up, it's like a permission to any man to open up and get something off their chest or reach out there.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Keith. Thanks for sharing your experience as well. Because like you said, the connection then with other people is so important.
Yeah.
How like even the connection to ourselves and that and connects to other people in
Yeah.
our lives as well.
Yeah.
How that, yeah.
And I think it's like that your message, and it doesn't even be, there's always this thing of rebuilding yourself, and but not 9 times out of 10, it's not even a rebuild, it's peeling away a layer that's already there. If you think of the sculptor and his stone and his rock, it's the rock that's the rough and edges, where it's as he chips away and sculpts away to his piece and his work of art then. So it's not always about rebuilding yourself. You're already there. It's already in you.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Brilliant. Thanks, Keith, for that. Darren, will it come to yourself just on why this conversation matters? Thank you.
It's super important that in this day and age, men have shown that it's okay to not be okay. We were always told this thing that has been said before, that this man up, shut up, stop being a bitch, all this, like that old school mentality of like big boys don't cry, and you just brush yourself off, you go again. But it's lovely to see four men come together, four normal blokes, that to show other people that it's okay to come together like this, to have real conversations. Everybody looks in everyone's life and go, "Oh, Jesus, Keith's life's amazing. Look at him." It's this thing of like comparison is the thief of all joy. You're always looking on Instagram and it's like, oh, well, he has his life together and my life's a bag of shit. It's just, when you actually get real men together, the conversations that come out when you're willing to be vulnerable and willing to share your story, it's just powerful to see what comes out of it. And yeah, it's just, look, it's super important in this day and age that this is happening, and the more of it that happens, it's better. It's going to be better for our kids, their kids. Where this was 10 years ago, this was unheard of. So imagine like my granddad, your granddad, these conversations would never have happened, and anything that did ever happen was always around drinking.
Brilliant. Yeah, Darren, so true. And it's the ripple effect that we can have, the conversations and the connections we can make, and just the awareness around mental health. It's going to help so many people going forward as well, and in the present moment as well. So thanks for that. So the first question, obviously, this webinar is on connecting men, hope, strength, and bravery. The second question I'm going to throw out to the group, and Keith, I might come to yourself on this one. What does hope mean to you, and what helps you hold on to it? Thank you.
think hope is just having a vision for yourself and for people around you. Um, I'm a firm believer in just your daily habits, your daily actions will always take you on an avenue, have a direction for you. And it's just sticking to them, because no matter what, life is going to throw shit up at you, throw obstacles at you. We're all going to fall down. So you can either stay down or just keep getting back up. And that's what it is, to just keep getting back up. That's not sounding like on a down, or oh, for fuck's sake, you're always down, down, down. It's not. We have little setbacks every single day, no matter what it is. And it's just to keep going, keep getting back up, keep pushing forward, because no matter what, and especially me now after seeing the past 2 years, there's light there at the end of the tunnel. I sat in my car crying, but then I was lucky that I actually had a car to sit crying in. There's other people lying on a sheet of cardboard at the time or something. So there's always just a positive and a negative in everything, no matter how it feels in that moment. And I know that's easy to say, and even now it's easy to say after coming out of what I've came out of, is there's always hope there. There's always light at the end of the tunnel.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thanks, Keith. Great stuff. Carol, will I come to yourself on the question?
Yeah, I mean, it's along the same lines as what Keith talking about. For me, like, hope is about tomorrow, about what tomorrow can bring. Today's today, and yesterday's gone, and tomorrow, brings, new light, um, new potential. And then it's like what Keith's talking about is the small, consistent steps you take, which are aligned to your values. And you're taking those little small steps. You're not going to climb the mountain, in a day. You're going to build. You're going to get to base camp, and you're going to build it from there. It's those types of having that kind of mindset is where you can see that the hope is there. And I suppose, like, for a fella, and like, we're all open on this call, we're chatting, like, for a fella who's had low self confidence, low self esteem due to whatever has gone on in my childhood and brought into my adulthood. When I'm sitting in a room like this, a virtual room like this, when I've met all you guys, obviously face to face, I just feel like and I've said this before on certain rooms, there's a transfer of energy, and it's positive energy. And I love that fact that we're giving that to each other. Darren touched on it there. Like, we're transferring positive vibe, positive energy to people, and we're giving. It's okay to have a chat. We're being vulnerable. We're being authentic, and we're not kind of reading off any script here. We're just shooting from the breeze here, shooting the breeze, and that transfer of energy piece for me is massive. And I see that, and I've seen it with my friends at various events I've been at, and it predominantly is around sport or running. And I'll give an example later on about this great connection I have with this long distance friend, and that's something I'll talk about later. But, like, yeah, look, I think that transfer of energy piece is positive, and it's men encouraging other men.
Love it, Carol. Yeah, men encouraging men. Love it. Really, really good. So thanks for sharing. Darren, will I come to yourself on the hope question? Thank you.
Look, it's just not a whole lot more to add. It's just been like what the lads have said there. Just like, I suppose I started a men's group like 2023. First of all, I didn't know who turned up. It was just you throw it out there and you see, and then over time, like one man, two man, three man, it's just built over time. And I suppose I take from that there's hope, that there's an appetite for change in Ireland, which is amazing. Like, the people are turning up and they're putting themselves out there. Not easy to do for men in particular. I'm very, very hopeful that I think we're going in the right direction. That, like I say, there is an appetite for change there. People are not, they want to kind of shake off those shackles of the past and move forward now to a brighter future for our young. Show them the way. So I'll be very hopeful that if we can set new standards for ourselves and pass that on, that will be passed on and passed on, instead of what we had to grow up with, this thing and put up short. Now it's like, now we're showing you a new way of, like, be vulnerable, show your emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I think it's a positive thing, especially I think, Carol, you were saying this conversation that we're having today, like, the more the merrier of these conversations that happen, it's the better for everyone, really. But that's brilliant. Thanks, lads, for your
I can
contribution on that
say it
question.
the same. Like,
Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
I have two boys. Joshua, the eldest was actually just 17 at the weekend, and then the youngest is 11 now. And I look at things or speak to them how like things that weren't always there for me, and to show them, like Darren's after saying there, it's not about man up. It's not this tough guy. I'm sure they even see it because, like, obviously I've owned the gyms and been in the gyms all my life. They think there's a certain stigma because I'm tattooed up to the neck and the eyeballs. There's a certain stigma that, but like, it's getting the two boys to learn themselves, speak up, speak out, no matter what it is, and get it off your chest, you know. And that's why I try to put into my work as well with some of the teens and youths. I do think of my boys and how I speak to them and what I want them to learn.
That's really
Beauty that,
good.
Keith, is as well. Yeah, you're showing them the way, and
Yeah,
then they'll show, and they even the way they
yeah,
interact with their own friends will be different.
yeah,
You know, and having those lines of conversation where they can come to you then and say, "Well, now that I'm not okay, I
yeah,
am struggling with this." Whereas in the past, you wouldn't have dreamt of going to you, and that's just the way it was. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thanks, lads. Any final comments or thoughts before we move on to the next question?
I just think
Be enough?
with the
Yeah,
two
go ahead,
examples there,
Karl.
like for Keith Young lads, my lad's 22. Darren, I'm not sure if you're a lad, but like it's like
25,
25, yeah. So like they're at a
25 Christmas. Yeah.
different age group. I come through the ranks, right? But I think the good thing to know, Cillian, just to add on that is there's groups out there, and maybe the man that's closest to you or the male role model in your life is not a good role model, and that's to be called out. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's fantastic, and that's great to have. But if you're looking for positive male role models, they're out there, and there's groups out there, and there's resources out there, and there's places you can find them. So that yeah, I know we both there's two men's groups running. We're running two men's groups and a gym on this call, and they're in certain localities, but there's stuff out there. So yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thanks, Karl. We'll move on to the next question, and obviously it's in the title of this webinar, and it's around strength. So what does strength look like to you? Darren, will I start with yourself this time, if that's okay? Thank you.
Yeah. So strength to me is it's having the courage to be able to express your vulnerabilities and to show your emotions. You know, the strength thing of the past was this thing of like you're a big boy and you're masculine and you're that that's all nonsense. And I think we just need to break down that stigma that's all nonsense. We're not all okay all the time. Like it is perfectly okay not to be okay. And I think being able to actually to go to somebody and to say, look, I'm not okay. Like I could deal with a hand, I could deal with a dig out. Because to me, that's real strength. That's real courage is to show that vulnerability and to show that you do actually need help sometimes. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with it. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. It's being open, honest, and transparent to what we're feeling, and getting support when we need it, I suppose, when not just going through the motions and continuing on. It's about just asking for that bit of helping hand at different stages. So, Keith, will I come to yourself on that one? Thanks, Darren.
Yeah, and following through on that, it's not about like a weight you can lift or what you can carry in the gym. It's what you're carrying in life and how we carry that then as well. And as Darren said, being open with that. And I think as it's a lot tougher than it sounds, but to just keep showing up, that can be important because so many people just give up or give in then as well. Whereas it's trying to just keep showing up on the days that you don't feel like it just, and it's as simple as sometimes getting out of your bed, making your bed. They're the little things. As I always say to my clients, when they're coming in and looking for these big transformations, it's not about flipping everything in one go, one big switch. Stack up the small wins, the small steps, and they just build up one step at a time, one rung of the ladder at a time. That's all it can be. And again, I always go back to no matter how much we fall down, it's just trying to get back up and keep getting back up. That's your strength in there, your resilience. And sometimes it can come down to make our decisions, isn't it? Like making hard decisions, especially when there's no one watching or no one cheering you on. It's staying in that. And that's where I think the supports can come in, the groups, your friends, your peers. I think men are speaking up a little bit more. Well, trying to break down those barriers for that, like strength in numbers, strength in conversation, strength in connection.
Brilliant. And I like it you mentioned about resilience, because that's so important to be able to bounce back from
Yeah,
the challenges that we face from time to time and knowing
yeah,
what to do in the situation as well, and
yeah,
using our skills and our coping skills that we have
yeah.
learned maybe and what we can do in the moment to make our day go a bit better or our week. Yeah. So
And it's in like that when I'm saying about decisions and choices, because everything you go through into the day, it's nearly always a choice. There's a yes and a no to everything. And it is just trying to stick on those right decisions, those right calls, the right choices. Because we're all gonna fall down. We're all gonna be a victim of something somewhere, but it's a choice to stay in that victimhood or hold on to that victimhood as well.
brilliant, brilliant. Thanks, Keith. Carol, will I come to yourself just on
Yeah,
the strengths question? Thank you.
yeah, I'll add on that. Like, I think the old way of strength was like, push through the pain and show no sign of weakness. That old toxic kind of approach was there.
Yeah,
The personas, you wear your mask. Your mask is, just put on the mask and go to work and just be that person and just turn up and have no absolute no you're not bringing the full version of yourself through the door of the office. You're leaving some stuff outside in the car park and you're not bringing that through. Think back to when your kids were young and the man goes back to work a couple of days later and there's the old way of doing things with the ladies at home, whatever, and you're trying to balance the whole thing there and you've got bills to pay and whatever things, new outlets, new outlays happening. So, but look, that's an example. And then I suppose what I like now with the whole thing is we're talking about it here. We touched on it. Is the whole physical resilience is now moving into like emotional openness. So of course we're still strong, of course we're still working out, but we're physically resilient. But we're also now talking about our emotions and we're being open. Like I would have been from the age of 10 till about the age of 40. I was in a football dressing room seeing I played football 11 side and then moved into whatever 5 side and stuff until I'm in my 40s. And that dressing room environment can be a toxic environment. It can be where you just come off a pitch and you're full of, endorphins, whatever. But then you go back to yourself and feel, oh no, this doesn't suit me. This whatever you did on the pitch, you talk, you call, you're looking for the ball, whatever. But then you bring it back to the dressing room. Then you realize now this dressing room environment isn't for me. And then you'll always break into your little pockets of friendships and your little groups you'll have talks with. But yeah, no, because it's just a different culture now. I think that whole piece around pushing through the pain, and now it's more or less more about talking about the full version of yourself. So yeah,
Lovely, lovely. Thanks, Carol. I'll stay with you. I just want to ask you a follow-up question. Has your definition of strength changed over time? So, is there any kind of thoughts around that?
it's an interesting one. I know I touched on the dressing room piece, but I was the quiet guy in the dressing room, right? And I was the loud guy on the pitch. And I'm only a little small fella, but a little left back, whatever. But I would have been a strong tackler. I would have looked after myself on the football pitch. And I know I'm back to sport straight away, but I I don't know if it's changed a lot. It's for me as an individual. I'll be hand on heart. I don't know if it's changed a huge amount for me. I would have certainly stayed true to myself all through my time, whether it's like I'm talking about in the sporting environment or whether it's in the workplace. I would never really have fallen or towed the line with what you have to do, the corporate line or whatever it was. I just would have stayed true to myself. I'll try and give an example here. I don't know if this is a appropriate example, but I always remember like borrowing my mother's car and I drove over to Dublin Airport. I was working in the airport and a part-time job. But when I had the car, it was the brand new Ford Fiesta she had or whatever. I felt great. I felt empowered. But I always knew once I parked that car and got out of that car, I was myself. I can't bring the car into the airport with me as a status symbol or whatever, shake the key. I was who I got out of the car and I was me again. I was just not that I changed whatever, but I'm trying to make it as long as the point is clear. But I stayed true to myself. I never really got above my station. I always had that self awareness, and I read a lot about self awareness right now. But it's just been staying true. So I don't know. Has it changed for me? Maybe not, but it definitely has changed from what I'm seeing in the outer circles. And the fact that I have a men's group similar to Darren is I see men coming down who are like in shock and they're like delighted that we're just chatting. We're not, there's no agenda. That we're not asking what rank you are in your job, what car drive, where do you live. It's just come on down, wear a pair of trainers and come on down and have a chat. So it's really equal, terra firma. It's equal status. It's we are who we are. We're all humans. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, Cillian, but that's no around that way doing it.
No, all good, Carol. All good. Yeah, that's perfect. We'll go with Darren. We'll go to yourself next. Have your definition of strength change over time? Then we'll go to yourself, Keith. Then, thank you.
I
Yeah,
suppose it's
Darren.
a
Yeah.
hard one to, yeah, it's a hard one to answer, but I suppose like I run weekly walk and talks with the men's group, so I think I see week on week the strength that it takes. Like takes a lot for a man to walk down to a meeting point and put their hand out and say, "Hi, I'm Cillian." It's not easy, really isn't. So yeah, I think that definition of strength, that's definitely changed to where it was a few years ago. I think, like you say, it's improving for the better. Yeah, look, like I say, it's a hard one to answer, but I see strength every single week in the men that come down to us because I know it's not easy. It takes a lot. But I do have men reaching out to me asking all sorts of questions, and like Carl said there, there's no hidden agenda. It's just let's come down, meet, go for a ramble. You feel better afterwards. You know, yeah,
Great.
that's really it.
Brilliant. Great. Thanks, Darren. And Keith, I'll just come to yourself then and we'll go to that question. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think say for example, with my background in health and fitness and different gyms, training sports teams, things like that, would have always thought like strength is what's going on in the gym and how you're building your body and all. But I've known pro bodybuilders, pro athletes who might look the most muscular, perfect person on the outside, and inside they're a complete shell, full of insecurity, full of anxieties. Like, the health and fitness industry is full of drink abuse, drug abuse. It's such a crazy industry as well. And I think as well, um, personally, then being going through like the homelessness stage, things like that, strength is getting up every day and still carrying on with your life. Getting up there, still making such a big effort with the two boys to make sure that they weren't part of what was going on, not to hide it from them, but just protect them from things as well, and to keep doing your time with those two boys, your weekends, your nights, keeping life as normal as possible, while just letting them know that life isn't always rosy either. Um, I think it's like that. Yeah, it's not just a physical sign of strength, as I said earlier. It's what not what you're carrying in the gym, but what you're carrying in life. You know, and what I always say to people as well is, and I think it's a simple sentence, but it can be transferred to anything in life. Everything just changes and strengthens one rep at a time. So whether it's an exercise, whether it's out drinking more water, out getting some steps, some walks, it's just that one rep, that one step, one at a time. That's it.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I love that, Keith. Thanks for that. One step, one rep at a time. Brilliant. Really, really good. Any final thoughts before we move on to the next question? And this is probably my favorite one of the panel that I'll be asking, but any final comments? Or are we happy to keep going? Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
perfect.
good.
Oh, but
So the third piece of the title is around bravery. So I think bravery for each of us is probably different. It's unique to each of us what we think bravery is. So Carl, come to yourself first. What does bravery mean to you?
I think there's a chunk of stuff in here, and we probably all covered. Hopefully, we do. I'm going to start with like one of my favorite books. A quote from that, if I remember the quote, it's Charlie Mackesy. It's the boy, the mole, the horse, and the fox. I don't know if you read it. It's like a flick through book. You could read it. You could flick through it in a night. But one of the quotes is, and the horse, I think, asked the question is, "What's the bravest thing you've said?" And the answer is help. I just think I know we touched on it already, but it's quite strong. It's quite emotive in terms of like I think when you ask for help, and it's not a case of failure. It's a case of like you don't want to. It's not a case of giving up. It's a case of you want to, you want to keep pushing forward. It's a big one for me. Like for me, then as sort of in addition to that, bravery will be like feeling the discomfort, and from the discomfort comes the growth. So like the whole messy middle piece. Myself and Keith did a coaching course a couple of years ago. I think it is now. We started in 2023. And as soon as I got into the module, I think, oh, this is going to be tough. I got to go and do this. I got to go with skills demo. I got to do some projects and some learner records. And there was a messy middle in there where I'm thinking, oh, I don't, this isn't for me. But if you can see the other side or just glimpse through it and come out the other side, it's that whole discomfort piece for me. That's bravery in many ways. I think it is. That you can put the head down and get through it. But there's tons of other bits of bravery. I'll leave the discomfort piece there, and I'll let the two other guys come in. But the few other examples I can think of which might come in at the end.
Yeah, I like what you mean about getting uncomfortable, I suppose, and just pushing through and different things that we kind of feel a bit of anxiety about or feel unease, different things like work things, life things, whatever it is that we kind of push ourselves to do things that are hard at different stages of life. And the rewards that can come through that are often more positive than negative, you know. So yeah, that's great, Carl. Keith, I'll go with yourself just on bravery if that's okay.
Um, in a conversation like this, or even with the panel and the lads here, and seeing what everyone does, like it was very brave of the lads to start up their men's group. And it's, as Darren said, you don't even know who's going to be there, who's going to show up. But I think being brave and having courage, it's like, that's not to say you're not fearful of something or afraid of something. Fear is going to be always there. So it's just still carrying on and walking towards it. Like I said earlier about that showing up, no matter what, you're showing up to things. We don't always want to. Sometimes we're afraid to, not in the mood of, but we do it anyway, and we let that momentum bring us forward. And I think another big part of bravery or courage is honesty. Like, when we're really, really honest with ourselves, I suppose, first and foremost, then we can be honest with anyone around us or out to the outside world as well. It's like we spoke earlier, I think Karl said about dropping the masks, dropping the ego, just being brutally honest, brutally authentic.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love that. Just dropping the mask and being honest with ourselves, and that has that positive impact on so many other people as
Yeah,
well that we feel better, 100%.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
Darren, will I come to yourself on the bravery?
Yeah, so again, just to go back to the likes of our walks on a Wednesday, you know, for a lad to look at it, to think, geez, what am I going to have to talk about? What am I, what it's it all about? You have all these fears, and it's that fight or flight kind of situation all the time. You're like, oh, I want to go, but I'm not sure. And I suppose it's just taking that chance. I think growth comes when you take a chance. These uncomfortable situations, even the likes of today, as I said to you before we got on, I'm riddled with like self doubt and anxieties and everything else. But I suppose it's just take a chance, just step outside. I know, like when we think of bravery, we think of a big ferocious lion and everything else. But I think when you're linking it back to what we're talking about now, I suppose it's just to step into those uncomfortable feelings sometimes. And I think amazing things happen from that uncomfortable. It's just, yeah, take a chance.
Great, thanks, Darren. And even just on that, with the kind of stepping into uncomfortable situations, I'll just throw it out to the panel. I suppose it can be very difficult in the moment. What would your piece of advice be to someone who is really, I suppose, wanted to try something new or might be a bit apprehensive? But yeah, what would be your piece of advice for someone to start something that they've been meaning to do for years? So, what would be the first piece of advice you'd give them? Will I put it to Carl? Will I do you want to go with that one? Would that be
Yeah,
okay? Just what piece of advice would you give to someone who wants to, I suppose, start something new or start an old hobby or something like that?
we were actually talking about on a work call earlier. We were working on a new workshop, and we're talking about. I'm not going to just talk about goals and goal setting, but it is about that. It's about goals. It's like making a commitment to yourself. So like we were talking about an example we were talking about was like Pilates. For a lady to start up a Pilates, she might say to her coach or mentor or whatever, I'm going to do Pilates. But then I suppose it's breaking it down like we've spoken about already. So what do you need to do? Well, first of all, you need to go online and register. So you sign up for a class. Second thing you need to do is get yourself the gear, your leggings, your mat, your runners, whatever you need. So it's about those taking the small steps. So like maybe a better example is sign up for a marathon. You've got maybe a 16-week training plan, and yourself and Darren are runners or whatever. Sign up and getting your runner. But like signing up for the marathon is one thing. You sign up, you get to place. That's great. Now what do? You go through the steps of 16-week training program. You got to eat well. You got to look after yourself. You got to buy all the running gear and so on. Maybe get a training buddy. So it's for me. It's to your answer your question. I suppose it's just making those first steps, the small steps, like you mentioned. Just commit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Carol, anyone else want to come in on that one?
The
Yeah,
decision.
Keith.
It's just the decision, making that decision. When that's the first point of it. That's your initial point, is make that decision. You make that your first port of call. And then, like Karl said, break it down into steps. And when you're breaking things down, don't overcomplicate it, don't overthink it. No matter what you're doing in life or wherever, simplicity works. Stick with what is simple, because the more complex we're making things, the more confusion and chaos we're creating. Simplicity will keep us moving forward. Simplicity will keep us taking action. So simplicity always works, no matter what it is.
Brilliant. Thanks, Keith. Darren, do you want to add to anything to that? Or are you happy to?
Yeah, look,
All
just
good.
stop procrastinating and just go and do it. Like we get one go at this, we want to go and try new things, and whether it's an old hobby, a new hobby, just challenge yourself. And like Keith said, make that decision and just go and do it. Like the longer you sit on the fence, you're just wasting time. You look back then, you go, geez, why didn't I start that a month ago? Why didn't I start that when I thought about it first? No, just turn up. Everybody's in the same boat on the first day or something, but no, just go, do it. You'll have no zero regrets.
It's often, I suppose, a thought process that people feel alone as well with starting something new, but
Yeah.
often the case it's not, that people are experiencing the exact same feelings as themselves. So it's just pushing yourself and just trying something. And with the decision you mentioned, Keith, as well, that's
You'll
the key
never,
piece as well.
you'll never ever be the first person in the world to feel a certain way. Someone has already been there and done that before you. So
Yeah,
just go for it. Make that decision, make that call, do it.
brilliant, brilliant. Thanks, Keith. So the next question I'm going to throw out to you is, what helps you feel connected to others, your community, or yourself? So I suppose we'll go with Darren if that's okay. Does anyone want to come in on that one? So what helps you feel connected to others, your community, or yourself?
Okay, so well, for me personally, I'm involved in a running club out in Portmarnock. We meet every Saturday morning. We go run, dip, coffee. I love to tap into the likes of that. Our weekly walks on a Wednesday. Again, I surround myself with a good group of men. We go for our walks. We go do different weekend activities, hiking. I involve myself in as many kind of healthy communities as I can. A lot of my, I won't say like years ago, a lot of my time was just spent in pubs, socialising. Now it's kind of surround myself in good, healthy communities that kind of I can grow from. Um, so they say about filling your cup. I tap into all of these as much as I can because that's where I get my energy from. Whether the Wednesday walk sets me up for the rest of the week, and then at the weekend again I go out, run, surround yourself with good people, and yeah, I think it's very important to tap into as many kind of healthy communities as you can.
Brilliant. That's great. Darren, Carol, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. It's I kind of look at the connected piece around you connect with yourself, you connect with others, and you connect with your community. So they're the kind of three things I would focus on myself. It's around for me, it's stuff like Darren's mentioned there about creating rituals. So like it would have been ingrained in me Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, probably then Sunday for football. So I would have been training, doing pre-match whatever on the Saturday, playing the game on the Sunday. That's in me. That's in my DNA. So then as the legs give up and you can't play football anymore, you move into another sport or you find something else. You try another ritual, and like similar to Darren, I have my rituals around my running group on a Monday, my park run on a Saturday. And if I'm training for something, I'm out during the week. But then I have like the rituals around coffee with my wife, coffee with my friends. It's all that kind of stuff. They're little things you put in place. You start them off and off you go. And like we touched on earlier, there was an absolute fear factor of what am I doing here, setting up this men's group? Why am I doing it? What am I doing it for? But I did it back to the coaching course myself and Keith did myself and the coach. We worked together, and she asked me to do a mind map on what you see, how you see the men's group. And I don't do a huge amount of mind maps, but this was an absolute gem of mind maps. So pen and paper. I always can see have a pen in my hand, but pen and paper, circle, and I called it. I put the name in the middle. And off the spin off that was like, I'd like it to be this, that, and the other. I'd like it to be the focus on isolation, look at loneliness, inclusive, that kind of stuff, diversity, bring men together. And then once I bounced that back to my coach, she's like, "This is brilliant. You got to go and do it." So like Darren said, just go and do it. Just start and connect with people. And like day one, whatever, the numbers are great, and up as far as 8 months later, the numbers are great. But it's around that. It's like we've all said it. It's about just getting it, doing it. Take it off the piece of paper and make it real. And that's my, and then myself, the rituals, the others, yeah, and then community. I'm involved in many aspects in the community. I do volunteering. I put my name into the hat for many a things. So yeah, it's around the full circle piece, right? The whole picture.
That's really good, Carl. I know we've spoken before about the rituals as well, so it's a really nice thing to have, like in just that it has contributes to yourself and your community and everything you're doing as well with volunteering. So it's a lovely thing to do. So yeah, thanks for sharing. Um, Keith, so have I come to yourself on the communities and the connection to yourself?
Yeah, yeah.
Go
Well,
first.
actually, I still have the gym, so I run different groups out of the gym as well, and I do a lot of online work with different groups. And then I've put workshops on in the local community here for people as well. I found for myself when I was going through, or my head would be such an overthinker, and I learned then I practiced some breath work and meditations, and I was really interested in to find out why this was working for me. Why was I so interested? But why did I find it so beneficial? And I went back and did an actual breathwork teacher's course. Then I was like bringing that into my groups and out to people, thinking, all right, this is a bit airy fairy. They're not going to go for this or be interested in this. But it's been an amazing response to it because it's just slowing down your thoughts, learning about your breathing. And like we mentioned earlier, someone mentioned about the fight or flight thing. The vagus nerve is what controls that. So learning different breathwork tips just resets your own nervous system, helps you connect with yourself. And I bring that into the groups that I work with now as well. So I work with a lot of men, a lot of women in the gym as well. And just from my own point of view, I like getting out for walks, the hikes. We do some with the family, with the brother-in-laws, with my brother. So it's not just all gym life. And now have obviously with the two boys as well, we get out ourselves. And even with the two boys, something as simple as parenting, I think because I have two boys, like the other day, for example, I brought the eldest fella, we went for dinner on our own. So it was important just to get the bit of one-to-one time and that it's not always the three of us, you know that way? Because there's always, no matter what, like obviously I'm a single dad with the two boys there with their mom. So I think it's very important to keep that connection, that relationship in there because there's always this sense of guilt in us that the relationship didn't work out. And you want to keep that. Now I'm lucky. I see the boys or speak to the boys every single day. That's my priority. Doesn't matter what's going on around me, that comes first. And I think just keeping things, it goes back to keeping things as simple, the simplicity of it. And that's what it is. I used to overcomplicate everything, overthink everything, and sometimes even over control things. And that made everything even then 10 times elevated to what was really going on, you know?
Brilliant. Thanks, Keith. And simplicity is the word of the webinar, I think. So yeah, I really like it.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's
yeah.
really, really good. I'm just going to pause for a second because we have attendees there. If I was just want to mention the Q&A button at the end of your screen. If you do have any questions for the panelists, feel free to preload and hopefully we will be answer them towards the end of the webinar. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask the Q&A button on the end of your screen. So the next question I'm going to throw out is what makes it difficult for men to ask for help or open up? So quite a good question, important one. Keith, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, yeah. I'm 50 years old now, and I think as Darren even said himself earlier, we were brought up like man up, just get on with it, don't boys don't cry, things like that. And I think there was always just a stigma about it. Like I'm 50, and in the space of the past 20 years, there's been three guys close to me who've committed suicide, who we lost to suicide. Person was about 18 years ago. And you'd never ever think this lad, he was a friend of ours, successful in business. Well, obviously looked successful from the outside in, relationship, kids, and like 18 years ago, so he would have been only going into his 30, turning 30, and to do something like that, you know. Same again in the last 10 years, I've seen it with two other guys as well. And it's like that. I think they felt they were going through things on their own. There was no one to speak to, no one to turn to. And you see even the likes of, I suppose lately, even with the likes of Ricky Hatton, the boxer, like it's so high profile. You think someone has the whole world, the best of everything, the best life in the world. And like I said earlier, inside can be just a constant battle, a constant shell. And it's about speaking out, as we said, conversations, connections. That's it. Just take that step forward. Just do it. That's why I think things like this are so important. So, so important.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Thanks for sharing. And like you said, it's the connection and the conversations. I mean, open and honest about what we're feeling, and that's really, really important. Darren, do you want to come in on the question there? And even what would, I suppose the question is, what makes it difficult for men to ask for help or open up, and anything we can do to, I suppose, help in that situation, it would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really just goes back to this thing of man up, shut up, keep it quiet. Everything was done behind closed doors. You kept everything to yourself, you never spoke about what you were feeling or um that's why again, as you said earlier, having four normal blokes from different backgrounds to normalize a conversation like this, I think more of this has to happen, because even if we reach one person today and it helps, they take something from it. If you always just have a target audience of one and that person, that's the ripple effect then, and that's it. It's just, I think it's about just over time to break down the stigma and break down that old way of thinking and to bring it forward for the next generations. When we're long gone, to think that maybe what we're doing now could have like a massive change on like the generations that come through, because things have changed. As Keith said, you're 50, I'm 47. Like, if you look from our childhoods, the way it's already changing now for the young kids now, to know what's it going to be like in another 20, 30 years' time. If we today, these conversations can have any kind of small part in making a change, that it's a healthier generation where people feel okay to talk about how they're feeling. And, the suicide numbers are staggering. Like, it's just, if we can save one person's life by having these conversations, and for people to think that, look, I don't feel okay, to reach out, there are services out there to get those conversations going, to break down these stigmas about mental health. And yeah, I think it's really, really important that more of this happens.
Brilliant. Thanks,
Let
Darren.
me
And like you
jump back
said,
in there, Cillian. I
yeah, go
think
first,
what
Keith.
Darren is saying there about the suicide numbers going so high, it seems to be becoming more and more frightening. Men in their 40s are getting older as well. Like, for some reason, the last couple of years, I've heard even around the local areas, the men are like going into their 40s or 50s who are doing this now as well. It's frightening. I think they're actually, they reaching a certain stage of life where, that way you can see things bigger, better, but like it seems to be in reverse. That's why these things are so important.
Absolutely. And I think, Darren, you hit it with, just if it just helps one person or some person that's watching this or watches the recording even after it's up online as well, it's just all about helping and spreading that awareness as well. So, Karl, I'll come to yourself if that's okay. And then we'll have one more question. And then I just have a few signposting slides and to wrap up. So, thanks, Karl.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks. Like I got to scribbling down a ton of stuff there from Darren and Keith chatting away. Like I'm a big fan of what they call foundational safety. It comes from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you have your safety as your base, and then you build from there to self actualization. But like if you think about, say, and I do talk about this a lot in the workshops that I do and the people I chat to, but about who's in your circle. Like who are the 7 people in your circle that you're going to talk with this week. Now I don't want to get too deep and have you all thinking about who's this, but it's not a bad thing to do. It's like a personal audit without using the financial term, but it kind of is that. Are there people in your circle that are either not good for you or you want to see more of? So less of or more of, and that's not being cutthroat, but that's being honest, right? Like I went down to the barber shop on Friday, and I recently, well, a couple of years ago, I changed barber because the barber was a lovely barber, great hair cutter, but he wasn't really a good chatter. Well, he wasn't really chatting at all, in fact, about anything that would be in any way resonate. But long story short, I now go to this barber because me and him just get on like a house on fire. We're emotionally connected. We're talking about this kind of stuff. So like there's safety around like psychological safety, there's emotional safety, there's intellectual, there's a ton of different safeties. But like when you go into an environment of say the safetiness of a barber's chair and you're able to have a proper good conversation, not just about the weather. I just love that. I walk out of that shop on Friday feeling enthused and full of beans and energized. Like, and then there's the whole piece around like, back to that piece of the people in your life, the sapper who saps the energy out of you, or the zapper who zaps energy into you. I mentioned energy earlier on. Like I love this environment here where we're all giving each other energy, we're feeding off each other's little nuggets, and we're taking pieces from here, from there, from everywhere. And that makes the better man, right? That makes you walk out of here going, you know what, I'm going to try that now. I'm going to go for that cup of coffee. I'm going to create that ritual or whatever it is. Yeah, look, that's the whole piece of me is just kind of check in with yourself and say, okay, who am I hanging out with? Darren touched on it earlier that a lot of it is based in the pub, right? That has been anyway. I asked the lads earlier on, where do you watch the match? We all watch the match at home. We're all chilling with our sons and our families and hanging out. And we all touched on Troy Parrott, and it's relevant right now for hopefully we timestamp this meeting. But Troy Parrott's interview after the game, if you haven't seen it, go and look at it. It's just phenomenal that the guy is so connected to his roots and his family and his friends and who brought him up in Belvedere Football Club and how he began as an 8-year-old. So look, yeah, at that there, surround yourself with good people, I suppose, is my overarching piece on that open thing.
Brilliant. There's loads in that, Carl. I love it. Absolutely love it. So yeah, just surround yourself with a good circle, a good network, and yeah, just enjoy conversation with people and enjoy and have fun and connect with yourself. Ask yourself how you're feeling daily, and yeah, don't be. I suppose the thing is not to be afraid to be vulnerable at different times to people we trust. I suppose that's the main thing. Or Keith, you want to say something there?
Yeah.
Yeah, work away.
We have like us speaking about the gym, not going on and on about the gym, but we just run like small groups, some say 5 to 10 people. You come in as part of the program, but it's amazing to see they can come in on having a bad day and they'll all just bounce off each other, push each other on, and no matter what, then their spirits are lifted. We don't really do many kind of like photos, and if they want to themselves, they can do it. I never ever record or take photos of anybody in the gym because they're not there for that. They're there for a release. They're to get shit off their chest, throw around some weights, throw around with each other, whatever they want to do. But that's it. That's it. It comes back to that environment, and that's I get so much feedback and positive response on text messages or WhatsApp. Just simply that keep the environment you're creating in there. It's just amazing, and that's what people want. It comes back to connection, just connection, and it is no matter what and where. Reach out, have conversations, and connect.
Brilliant. Thanks, Keith. I'm just going to share the slides and then we'll come back to for the one final question before we close up. So give me 2 seconds there. I'll just share the slides and yeah, it's coming up there now. So if you can let me know, you can see this now. This is the first slide and then the second one is coming up there now. Hopefully. Yeah, coming up there. Perfect. So just obviously myself and Cara work with Mental Health Ireland. So we have a range of different workshops available. So these are some of the offerings, and this information is on the Mental Health Ireland website as well for community and corporate training as well. So these are just some of the offerings. We have step 1, engage with mental health, and it goes into the 5 ways to well-being. Step 2 is around expanding your toolkit. So it looks a little bit about stress management. And then the third one then is step 3 around navigating mental health conversations in the workplace. So more information is on the training section of our website as well. If you do want to reach out and learn more, and I can give my email address is Cillian@mentalhealthireland.ie if you want any more information. Then our next campaign coming up to Christmas is just a positive one, really around connection, like we're talking about in this webinar, and around connection at Christmas. So really nice campaign with, I suppose, there'll be workshops and talks happening as well. So you can donate and then fundraise, and then there's a shop as well where there's different Christmas cards and merchandise that can be purchased as well. So that's up on the Mental Health Ireland website as well if you want to have a look at that. And then, Darren, do you want to share a little bit on this? Just if you want to come in there.
Yeah, thanks, Cillian. So this is our third year running this shoulder to shoulder hike. It's to mark International Men's Day. So it's on in Glencullen this Sunday, 10 a.m. It's a moderate 3 hour hike. So it's kind of for all, if you have any reasonable level of fitness, they'll be at a nice leisurely pace. We'll have marshals kind of at the front and the middle at the back of the group. So it's really just to get men out and get men connecting and to continue the conversations like what we're having here today is to extend that over a period of 3-4 hours. It's priceless. You spend a few hours with sound men on the hills. Like it's really the impact it can have on your day-to-day life is absolutely amazing. So like Will our White is going to come and share his story on the day. Incredible story where he's came from to where he is now. Music from Kieran Morn. Yeah, like I say, it's just to get men out, get them active, looking after their physical and mental health, and
Yeah,
really looking
brilliant.
forward to it.
Great. Thanks, Darren. Much appreciated.
I've actually been on that hike myself the last couple of years when the lads first started out, just taking part in it. Brought my son, brought my brother. We've all went, and it's a special morning. I highly recommend anyone to go.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Keith. Brilliant, great stuff. So I'll just stop the share for a second. Final question. What is one thing you're taking away from today's conversation? So, Carol, I'll go to yourself.
I had a kind of wrap up in my head, which was kind of a message to myself and a message to everybody out there, is to read the books and listen to the podcasts, get all the information and listen to the great talks like this. Hopefully you found some information on this, but then go and actually do it. Like we said earlier, go and take those first steps and go and do it. And then my final piece would be to surround yourself with good people. And people like these gentlemen on this call here will give you ideas. And there's a hike on there. There's a run coming up here. There's this, that, and the other. Doesn't all have to be physical. There's other stuff. There's coffee shops here. So there's loads of ideas coming out of good people. So surround yourself with like-minded people will be my final takeaway.
Brilliant. Great. Thanks, Carol. Keith, I'll go to yourself.
Yeah, just back that up. I think it's very important for men like ourselves to just be open, be vulnerable, and show that it's just actually perfectly normal. It's actually a big sign of strength, big sign of courage. And then if you're feeling stuck anywhere or down anywhere, as I said, break it down as simple as you can. Make some decisions, but actions. All the books don't matter. All the podcasts don't matter if you're not making a move and making an action.
Brilliant. Thanks, Keith. And finally, Darren, pass it yourself.
I think it's really great to see that there's appetite for change. I think we want better for ourselves and for our loved ones. Surround yourself with good people, I think, is the one of the biggest and most important things. I think when you've got good people around you, I think anything is possible, and you've got that support and someone to back you up and always have your back and not be talking behind your back. When you surround yourself with the right people, I think the sky is the limit.
Absolutely. Lovely way to finish up this webinar. I would just like to thank the panelists, Carl, Keith, and Darren, for coming on to have this discussion on, I suppose, celebrating International Men's Day on the topic, connecting men, hope, strength, and bravery. I felt the discussion was really good. I was just, really insightful, and the knowledge shared was brilliant. So, like I was saying at the start, this is recorded and will be up on the Mental Health Ireland website and YouTube channel over the coming days. And yeah, plenty more of these webinars are needed, I think, just with the conversation we've had today and just to spread more awareness around men's mental health. But I just want to thank attendees that attended today. And if you want to, if when we do send out the recording, please do share with your network or anyone that would be interested in listening to this as a webinar itself. But yeah, we'll leave it there. I just want to again say thank you to all of you, and we'll see you at the next webinar, hopefully in the new year maybe. And yeah, see you all soon. So thanks again.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for that. Great stuff, guys.
Cheers.